Hey y'all. So there was a lot of racing this past weekend, and there was also a lot of drama that came with that racing. So I thought we'd talk about that today. So I guess we'll start with the F1 race. And listen, I am so happy for Oscar. I am just thrilled that he got his first win. Actually, before the race started, I had told a friend that I was pretty sure Oscar was going to get his first win. Like, I just had a feeling that Oscar was going to win the race. So I'm very happy to have been right. I'm super, super excited for him. That's so awesome. Um, it is just unfortunate that there was drama surrounding this first win. So let's talk about McLaren's strategy. I get what they were doing. I do. I understand why they did what they did and why they pit Lando first. But they just made things way more complicated than it needed to be, in my opinion. So, listen, props to Lando for being a team player and giving the spot back to Oscar. I can't imagine how hard that was to do because obviously, as a race car driver, you want to win. Um, and this win could have also made, a good dent in the championship and gotten Lando that much closer to Max. So, hats off to Lando. I mean, I think that was the right move because Oscar had earned that spot, right? Like, he got the better start. He had raced a beautiful race. Like, Oscar deserved that win. He earned that win. So I'm really glad that Lando did decide to give that spot back. And, he said in some of his post race interviews that Oscar has done a lot for him. Oscar's been a good teammate. So he felt it was the right thing to do to give that position back. And Lando acknowledged that, he hadn't earned that position. It was given to him via the strategy, and that Oscar had gotten that position in the start of the race, that Lando had lost that position at the start of the race, so it was rightfully Oscar's, and I'm glad that he saw it that way and then did give the position back because, like I said, I really do feel like that was Oscar's win. Like, he had earned that from the start of the race. Like, that was his race. I still can't imagine, though, how frustrating it is to have that play out that way. Obviously frustrating for Lando, but also frustrating for Oscar because they just created a lot of drama around his first win that wasn't necessary. So I can't imagine what it was like within the McLaren team after all of that, but overall, obviously, just super happy for Oscar. Um, there was also the drama between Lewis and Max and them getting together. Max up in the air. That was very interesting. I have to agree with Lewis. It looked like, hey, it's just a racing incident. These things happen. Like, everybody was fine. They both finished the race. Obviously, Lewis on the podium, Max in fifth, but not a big deal in the end, in my opinion. Charles making it up to fourth was also really awesome, in my opinion. He's been struggling a lot recently. Ever since his win, I just feel like things have not gone his way. And he struggled in practice. He had that issue, and then he struggled in qualifying, and it just was not his weekend, not going his way. So for him to finish fourth was awesome. Checo had a decent comeback after his issues in qualifying, and I don't know what it is about Checo in qualifying, but things have not been going his way at all recently, and it's just been really interesting because it's like week after week after week something goes wrong. He's just struggling. So he ended up with a good finish, and I think that that's really all Red Bull could ask for, honestly, after where he started. So good for him. So obviously, all of qualifying was wild. I think that's the craziest qualifying for F1 I've watched yet. So you had George out in Q1, which is not something we're used to seeing in recent races. Logan Sargent into Q2, 2 races in a row. Let's go. Logan Sargent points in 2024. Listen, I think it's going to happen. I have a good feeling. They were strong in Silverstone, and he qualified decent in Hungary. Obviously, his finish wasn't as great as I was hoping for, but I feel like the Williams are making good progress. And I'm just saying, I feel it. Logan Sargent is going to get points in the 2024 season. And I don't think that's just wishful thinking. So, I unfortunately did not get to watch the Indycar race this week. And I honestly didn't see much about the race other than the accident that happened. I have seen many videos of the accident. The clips are obviously all over the internet. From what I've seen, it looked like there was enough time for a caution to be thrown, or at least to let the drivers know that there was a car stopped up ahead. And I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it was handled the best. And thankfully, though, everybody is okay. Nobody was seriously injured. Like, that's so awesome. It just goes to show you the safety of these cars, which is great. You know, super thankful that everybody got out of all of that okay. And I haven't really heard positives, negatives about the race. I think it was a decent race, but I can't speak to that. All right, on to the Brickyard 400, which I do have lots of opinions about. The race overall was not that great, in my personal opinion. I mean, towards the end there, yeah, we got some good racing, but the majority of the race was single file. People couldn't pass. I mean, you had at one point there where the leader, who I think maybe was Denny at that point, like, couldn't lap the last place car. Like, what is happening here? Like, what are we doing? This package is just not working. Like, if your lead car cannot lap the last place car, something is not working, and NASCAR really needs to figure it out. And we've got to make something better, because this is not fun to watch. Once you got to the end of the race, obviously it was more exciting because you had all those cautions and restarts, and so that made for entertainment. But when you have the majority of a race, especially a race that's supposed to be a crown jewel, where people can't pass, everybody's single file, like, nobody can make a move, something's obviously wrong and needs to be fixed. So that's one complaint that I have with that race. Another complaint is the stupid penalties that were given to Chase Elliott and Brad Keselowski. Listen, I have seen what NASCAR sent out to the drivers, and in my opinion, it's very vague. It just said that you can go wide, but that you can't be on the racing surface or impeding other drivers who are racing when you're on the service road when you're coming out of pit lane. So I feel like that's still not super clear, because, to be fair, nobody was racing down where Chase and Brad were when they got their penalties. Nobody had been that low on the track. They weren't in, like, the racing line. They weren't impeding anybody. Like, nobody had been down there. What was the point of the penalties? Like, I think that was stupid. I think that was a bad call by NASCAR. And I feel like if that's how NASCAR was going to play things, they should have been more clear in the instructions that they had given the drivers. Just personal opinion. And that's interesting too, because Larson, he was not up as high as Chase and Brad were, but he still had tires over that top white line. And yet there was no penalty for him. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, why NASCAR called it for Chase and Brad, not for Larson. Like, what is with the inconsistency? That's my biggest complaint, really, is the inconsistency with NASCAR. And it obviously wasn't just this race, although they did show a lot of inconsistency this race. They've been inconsistent for a long time. We have seen it time and time again. And it's just frustrating. It's frustrating as a fan watching. So I can imagine what it's like as a team or driver having to deal with this week in and week out and never knowing for sure what NASCAR is going to do. Because honestly, I don't think NASCAR knows what they're going to do. So that was just really frustrating. And the inconsistency also showed at the end of the race as we were coming down to the last few laps and the 41 car spun and was stopped and NASCAR didn't throw a caution. And they waited to throw the caution until after Larson had taken the white flag. Where in past races with similar situations, they have been so quick to throw the caution. Like, we know they can throw quick cautions if they want to. And yet they waited until Larson took the white flag to throw the caution, which then ended the race. That doesn't make sense to me either. In my opinion, it was clear that Priest was not going anywhere. Like, that car was not moving. They had plenty of time to throw the caution. So, I don't know. The inconsistency just irritates me. And in my opinion, NASCAR showed a lot of inconsistency in this race. So that is just a big complaint of mine. Overall with NASCAR, that's a big complaint of mine. But especially this week, like, just irritating to watch. I also have some complaints with how the restart was handled when Brad ran out of fuel. And I totally understand Blaney's frustration because obviously the bottom line was the preferred lane to be in, right? So if Ryan had been given the chance, he would have taken that bottom line. But he didn't. He didn't get to choose that because he was in second and Brad was first place car, so Brad got to choose. But then before they restarted, right as they were restarting, Brad runs out of fuel and gets down off the track, giving them that preferred position to Larson. When honestly, that preferred position then should have been Ryan's. And I do agree with Ryan saying that, hey, at that point when Brad's out of gas, like they're just restarting, okay, let's take one more lap and choose again, because then Ryan would have been down on the bottom in that preferred lane. Now, if that would have happened, would the outcome of the race been any different? I don't know. Obviously, we're never gonna know. But Ryan did have a strong car, and I feel like he would have been fighting for the win for sure. But Larson also had a strong car, so who knows how that would have ended. But I do think that was handled poorly, in my personal opinion. I think NASCAR could have done something better with that. So it is what it is. You know, it's said and done. Can't change anything now. And I am happy for Larson. I am a Larson fan. I was super excited for him to win at Indy, and especially in the paint scheme that he had this week. And, you know, kind of get that redemption for the disappointment that was the double attempt in the Indy 500 and everything that happened that weekend. It's super cool to see him get the win at the Brickyard. I just think that a lot of things throughout the race could have been handled better, and I don't know if Larson would have won if things would have been handled differently. So, not to take away from Larson's win, because he obviously was in the right place at the right time, right? And he's obviously a very, very talented driver. He was very strong. He showed that all race. Like, you can't take that away from him, but I do think that there are some things that NASCAR could have handled better. So, those are my thoughts about the racing that we had this weekend. We had some craziness in all three series, and it was a bit of an eventful weekend. So, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.